DC character Ice, also known as Tora Olafsdottir, possesses the ability to control and manipulate ice and snow through her magical powers. She can project ice in various forms, from creating large, icy structures to forming platforms that allow her to skate across surfaces. Ice is capable of generating massive quantities of ice, which she uses for offense, defense, and even creating towering icy figures. Her abilities also include freezing opponents and surrounding areas, and she can wield this power both in battle and for environmental control. In addition to her elemental powers, Ice is skilled in hand-to-hand combat, making her a versatile and formidable superhero.
Bear with me on this one, because we're taking a look at Ice from the Justice League. And trust me, she's one of those characters that I think gets overlooked sometimes. So people think, oh, Ice powers, okay. But there's so much more to her story,
Right.
We've got all these cool excerpts and snippets about her life and everything. And we're going to really kind of peel back the layers and see what makes Ice tick.
Sounds interesting. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first off, when you think of superhero origins, you think, I don't know, bitten by a radioactive spider or something, right? Yeah. So Ice's story is it's a little different. She wasn't born in a lab or anything like that. She was actually part of, get this, a nomadic Romani clan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, our expert here can speak to this more, but that's a really unique background for a superhero.
Right, definitely. The Romani people have a long and often difficult history. They've faced a lot of prejudice and discrimination, constantly having to move and adapt to new places and cultures. So for Ice to come from that kind of background, I think it really adds a layer of complexity to her character. It makes you think about her sense of belonging, her understanding of the world. How did that upbringing shape her worldview?
Exactly. And speaking of shaping her worldview, her powers didn't just conveniently appear one day. We see in the comics that Ice's powers, they're deeply tied to her emotions. They first manifest when she's facing a really traumatic event, her family is in danger, and boom, these ice powers just erupt. It makes you think about the connection between trauma and power, how she must feel about her abilities.
Definitely. It's not just, oh, I have these cool powers, time to fight crime. It's a burden in a way, too, a reminder of a painful past. And maybe even why she tries to keep that past hidden.
Exactly. And, when she first starts out as a hero, she's called Ice Maiden II.
Ice Maiden II.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like she's following in someone else's footsteps.
Yeah.
But eventually, she sheds that name and joins the Justice League International. That's a big deal. It's like going from, the minor leagues to the majors.
Absolutely. And it's a deliberate choice, I think. She's stepping out of the shadow of her predecessor, embracing her own identity as Ice.
It's a power move, for sure. And speaking of power, can we talk about Superman for a second?
Oh, boy.
I mean, Ice and Superman, that's a couple I would have loved to see more of.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, his death, it must have hit her hard. And we see in the comics, it's not just her. It's like the whole superhero community is shaken.
Of course. Superman, he represents this unyielding symbol of hope. And his death, it forces everyone to confront their own mortality, their own vulnerability. And for Ice, who had feelings for him, it's a profound loss. It makes you question everything.
And tragically, she ends up facing a similar fate, right?
Yeah.
Killed by Overmaster.
It's a classic example of heroic sacrifice. Ice, she puts her life on the line to save others. It really highlights her courage and selflessness.
But then she comes back. I mean, death in comics, it's not always final, but still.
Right, but her resurrection, it's not like she just picks up where she left off. There are consequences. She attacks the birds of prey. Of course, it's temporary, but it shows that death, it changes you. It makes you question who you are, what's real.
It makes you think about the lasting impact of trauma.
Yeah.
How experiences like that can stay with you.
For sure.
But, getting back to Ice's powers, they're described as being tied to her emotions, even maybe magical in some ways. What do you think about that?
It's interesting, right? There's this idea that her powers aren't just purely scientific. They fluctuate depending on her emotional state. When she's angry or afraid, her powers are stronger. There's a rawness to it, it suggests a deeper connection to something beyond the physical.
And she's a skilled fighter even without her powers. I feel like people forget that.
Totally. She's not just throwing ice around. She can hold her own in a fight.
Exactly. So, if we're looking at Ice, we're not just looking at an ice queen, right? she's complex. There's this depth to her, this history, this struggle.
Absolutely. She's a reminder that heroes, they're not all cut from the same cloth. They come from different backgrounds, they have different experiences that shape who they are.
And her story, I think, it challenges us to look beyond the surface, to think about the complexities of identity, the weight of prejudice, the impact of trauma. It's a story that it stays with you.
I agree. And it's a story worth exploring further.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to all our deep divers out there, if you want to learn more about ICE, check out her run with the Justice League International. It's a wild ride. And until next time, keep diving deep.